feel it, sense this reality of the invisible state, you would in time become aware of this greater world, this dimensionally larger world. That's what it means to live in the Spirit. Concentrate your attention on an invisible state and remain faithful to this contemplation, feeling and sensing the state as a reality. Feeling and sensing this state as happening now. Feeling and sensing it. So Neville says our first story for now is the 5th chapter of the Gospel of Mark. In this chapter, there are 3 stories told as though they were separate experiences of the dominant character. The first story, we're told that Jesus came upon an insane man, a naked man who lived in the cemetery and hid himself behind the tombs. This man appealed to Jesus not to cast out the devils that bedeviled him. But Jesus said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. Mark chapter 5 in verse 8. Thus Jesus cast out the devils that they may now destroy themselves. And we find this man for the first time clothed and in his right mind and seated at the feet of the Master. We will get the psychological sense of this chapter by changing the name Jesus to that of enlightened reason or fourth dimensional thinking. Enlightened reason. So the Christ mind. And please understand that we're talking about psychological state. Psychological state. That's what is here. We're looking at the Bible psychologically. So when the word devil is used, it's talking about a way that you are thinking. The way that you are thinking. The way that you are thinking. Not talking about a devil that some people have in mind is some individual or some being that they envision in all kinds of ways. No, it's the way that you are thinking. And Jesus is the way that you are thinking. It is an approach to life, a choice. And this is enlightened reason or fourth dimensional thinking. He says, as we progress in this chapter, we're told that Jesus now comes upon the high priest, whose name is Jairus. And Jairus, the high priest of the synagogue, has a child who is dying. She is 12 years old, and he appeals to Jesus to come and heal the child. Jesus consents, and as he starts toward the home of the high priest, a woman in the marketplace touches his garment. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue has gone out of him, turned himself about in the press and said, Who touched my clothes? Mark chapter 5 and verse 30. The woman who was healed of the issue of blood that she had had for 12 years confessed that she had touched him, and he said unto her, Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace. Mark chapter 5 and verse 34. He continues. As he continues toward the home of the high priest, he is told that the child is dead, and there is no need to go to resurrect her. She is no longer asleep, but is now dead. As soon as Jesus heard the words that were spoken, he said unto the ruler of the synagogue, Be not afraid, only believe. Now, this is amazing. Put yourself in the story. Now, let your psychological state go through. Not actually story in the sense of just becoming one of those characters. Step into the psychological state that is being talked about. Be not afraid, only believe. Mark 5 and verse 36. And when he was come in, he said unto her, Why make you this ado and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleepeth. Mark 5:39. With this, the entire crowd mocked and laughed, but Jesus, closing the door against the mocking crowd, took with him into the household of Jairus his disciples and the father and mother of the dead child. They entered into the room where the damsel was lying, and he took the damsel by the hand and said unto her, Damsel, I say unto thee, arise. Mark 5:41. From this deep sleep she awoke and arose and walked, and the high priest and all the others were astonished. And he changed them, and he charged them straitly that no man should know it, and he commanded that something be given her to eat. Mark 5:43. And then Neville begins to apply. You are this very moment, as you are here, pictured in the 5th chapter of Mark. A cemetery, remember the first incident, the insane man in the cemetery. A cemetery is for one purpose. It is simply a record of the dead. Are you living in a dead past? Remember, we said this loss of voice, identity, and time. Are you living in a dead past? If you are living among the dead, your prejudices, your superstitions, your false beliefs that keep you alive are the tombstones behind which you hide. You tell the same story over and over and over again. If you refuse to let them go, you are just as mad as the madman of the Bible who pleaded with enlightened reason not to cast them out. There is no difference. But enlightened reason is incapable of protecting prejudice and superstition against the inroads of reason. And so you got this aspect, you got the same story that you're telling over and over again. And it could be for an individual, it can be for a group. That's why the same story is told over and over and over again. And you know you've either told it or you've heard it. Over and over again. There are some people who are just simply stuck, and you've heard the story. Neville says there is not a man in this world who has a prejudice, regardless of the nature of the prejudice, who can hold it up to the light of reason. Tell me you are against a certain nation, a certain race, a certain ism, a certain anything. I do not care what it is. You cannot expose that belief of yours to the light of reason and have it live. In order that it may be kept alive in your world, you must hide it from reason. You cannot analyze it in the light of reason and have it live. When this fourth dimensional focus comes and shows you a new approach to life and casts out of your own mind all these things that bedeviled you, you are then cleansed and clothed in your right mind. And you sit at the foot of understanding called the feet of the master. And you know, there are so many prejudices that are had in the world today. Prejudice against people, against groups of individuals, against races, against creeds, against religious beliefs, against gender identity. So many things that are bedeviling our society. Bedeviling our society. And they will continue in your mind. Continue in your mind. Because you're telling the same story. In order to be different, in order to have different, in order to do different, you must be different. And this is the way that you are walking into being different. So Neville says that when you begin to think fourth dimensionally with enlightened reason, you begin to cast out these old ways of thinking. Your insanity is cast out. Now clothed in your right mind, you can resurrect the dead. What died? The child in the story is not a child. The child in the story is your ambition. It is your desire. It is your unfulfilled dreams, the dreams of your heart. This is a child housed within the mind of an individual. For as I've stated before, Neville says, the entire drama of the Bible is a psychological one. The Bible, Neville says, has no reference at all to any person who ever existed or any event that ever occurred upon the earth. All the stories of the Bible unfold in the mind of the individual person. In this story, Jesus is the enlightened or awakened intellect. It is your enlightened or awakened intellect. What is the issue of blood? A running womb is not a productive womb. She held it for 12 years. She was incapable of conceiving. She could not give form to her desires because of the running of the issue of blood. You are told her faith closed it. As the womb closes, it can give form to the seed or idea. Her faith made her whole. As your mind is cleansed of your former concept of self, you assume you are what you want to be. And remaining faithful to this assumption, you give form to your assumption or you resurrect your child. You are the woman cleansed of the issue of blood, and you move toward the house of the dead child. The child or state you desire is now your fixed concept of yourself. But now, having assumed that I am what I formerly desired to be.